My wife secretly forged my signature to sell our family home for $250, $0, then gambled it all away, and now she's claiming I owe her for expenses I never authorized. How do I even prove any of this? I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my entire life would come crashing down because of something I never saw coming. I mean, I always thought I knew my wife, Sarah. She was the kind of woman who seemed to have everything under control. She was sharp, assertive, and always had her way. But in the end, it turns out she was playing me all along, and I only figured it out when I stumbled onto something that made my blood run cold. It all started about 2 months ago. Things had been tense, but I chalked it up to work stress and the usual grind of life. Sarah had been acting a little distant, more irritated than usual, snapping at me over small things. She'd come home late from girls' nights, always with some excuse about how her friends wanted to go out for drinks. At first, I didn't think much of it. Women have their nights out, right? But then I noticed little things that didn't add up. Her phone kept hidden, she'd delete texts, and she suddenly took an interest in her appearance more than usual. That was odd, considering she'd always been pretty confident in herself. One night I decided to check her phone when she went to the bathroom. I know, kind of invasive, but I was desperate for clues. I didn't expect much, but what I found was enough to shatter my world. There were messages between her and some guy I'd never heard of, talking about meeting up, sneaking around, and even plans for a weekend getaway. The tone was flirty, intimate, definitely more than just friendly chit-chat. My stomach sank. I felt sick, like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my partner, was cheating on me. And not just that. She was hiding it, lying about where she was, and I had been completely blind to it. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I started questioning everything. How long has this been going on? Was I just a fool thinking we had a stable marriage? Did she ever love me? The worst part was the realization that I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left with nothing but a pile of lies. The next day I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I knew about the affair, showed her the messages I found. Her face twisted into a sneer and she spat back. "Oh, so you've been snooping. Typical, you think I'm cheating on you. You're paranoid." She everything, even though the evidence was right there on her phone. She accused me of spying, of not trusting her, and then she started crying, fake tears, I could tell. She said I was overreacting, that I was crazy, and that I was just jealous because she'd been working late and trying to get her career back on track. But I knew better. I knew she was lying. The emotional hit me hard. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? I'd built my life around her, worked hard to provide for us, and now I was wondering if everything was just a lie. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she lied so effortlessly. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest and I didn't know how to breathe. My mind kept circling back to the moment I found those messages. It was like a switch had been flipped, and suddenly everything was different. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand answers, and maybe even try to fix this mess. But another part of me knew I couldn't stay married to someone who lied so blatantly. I started to see the cracks in our relationship, how her lies had become a pattern, how she'd been sneaking around for months, maybe longer. I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was time to face the reality that my marriage was over, and I had to figure out what that meant for me. I also started noticing more signs: money going missing from our joint account, strange charges on our credit cards, and a sense that she was hiding something bigger. That's when I discovered she had secretly forged my signature to sell our house for $250, $0. I was stunned. She had been planning this behind my back. I found out she gambled it all away, every penny gone in a matter of weeks. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged, said she needed to make some investments, and then spun this story about how I owed her for expenses I never authorized. It was like she was trying to justify her betrayal with more lies. That was the moment I realized she had been planning her escape for a long time. She was manipulative, calculating, and ruthless. I felt used, betrayed, and completely helpless. I didn't know how to even begin to prove any of this. How do you catch someone in a lie that they've been covering up for months? I was drowning in a sea of secrets and deception, and I had no idea how to get out. All I knew was that I needed to do something, anything, to reclaim what was left of my dignity and figure out how to move forward from this nightmare. After I found out about the forged signature and the house sale, everything just spiraled even further out of control. I remember sitting alone in the living room, staring at the bank statements and the receipts she had left lying around. The more I looked, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She drained our savings, gambled away the money, and then spun this web of deceit about expenses I never approved. I kept thinking, how could she do this to me? How could she be so cold, so calculating? It was like discovering a whole different person living under my roof. The thing is, I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. I'd trusted her with everything, including my life. We had a good thing, or so I thought. We'd been together for over 10 years, raised a family, built a life. And now I saw the truth. She had been lying to my face the entire time. The house, the money, the secret affairs, everything was a lie. It felt like my entire world was crumbling and I couldn't find a way to stop it. I knew I had to confront her again, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just accuse her blindly, so I started digging deeper. I hired a private investigator. It was hard to admit I needed help, but I couldn't do this alone. The investigator confirmed what I already suspected. She'd been sneaking around with a guy named Mike for months. There were photos, texts, even receipts from hotels and restaurants where she'd spent nights. I was floored. All those nights she claimed she was working late, she was with him. When I finally sat her down and showed her the evidence, she lost her temper. She called me paranoid, crazy, and accused me of invading her privacy. She told me I was just jealous, that I was insecure, and that I was being unreasonable. She said I was controlling her life. But I knew better. I knew I wasn't paranoid. I was just seeing what was right in front of me. Still, she kept denying everything, spinning stories about how she was just trying to find herself, or that Mike was just a friend who was helping her with her career. I didn't buy any of it. As I listened to her lie, I felt something I'd never felt before: true rage. Not just at her, but at myself for ever trusting her this much. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all of this? How did I let her get away with it for so long? I thought about the life we built, the promises we made, and how she was throwing it all away for some guy she barely knew. It was like I was watching my marriage die in front of my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. But the most shocking part was yet to come. After she calmed down from her angry outburst, she started claiming that I owed her money, that I had been spending more than I realized, that I was irresponsible, and that she was just trying to manage everything because I was bad with money. That was a new level of manipulation. She was trying to turn the tables, make me look like the bad guy. I knew it was just another lie. She was desperate to cover her tracks, and her accusations about me were just her way of deflecting. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. She sold our house behind my back, gambled away the proceeds, and now she was trying to pin her mess on me. It was like I was living in some twisted reality. The betrayal cut so deep I could hardly breathe. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every day since I uncovered the truth. I was angry, yes, but also hurt. Deep down, I was mourning the marriage I thought I had. I started questioning everything: myself, her, our life together. Was I blind? Did I miss all the signs? Or was she just that good at hiding her true nature? I didn't want to believe she was capable of this level of betrayal, but the evidence was irrefutable. She lied about everything, including her feelings for me. She was cheating, stealing, manipulating, and I was the one left to pick up the pieces. The pain was overwhelming, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. But honestly, I was just trying to survive the shock of it all. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to piece together what little was left of my life. Every time I thought I had a grip on the situation, something else would come crashing down. I found bank statements showing she'd transferred money into accounts I didn't even know she had. There were receipts from casinos, online betting sites, and even a few from a luxury hotel she stayed at with Mike. It was like a trail of destruction she'd left behind, and I was the one left to pick it all up. The worst part was realizing how much she'd lied to me, how she'd manipulated everything to cover her tracks. Her stories about expenses and working late were so transparent now. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. I started thinking about the house, our family home, the place I thought we'd grow old in. She forged my signature to sell it for $250, $0. I found the paperwork, the fake signatures, the notarized documents. She'd been planning to walk away with the money, leaving me with nothing. When I confronted her about the signatures, she just shrugged and said, "You're too trusting, Jason. You always believed everyone was honest. You're naive." That hurt more than anything. She was trying to make me feel guilty for trusting her, for believing in our marriage. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying to my face, sneaking around, and now she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. I needed a plan. I couldn't just let her get away with this. I had to prove everything, get legal proof, financial records, anything that could hold her accountable. I started gathering everything I could find: bank statements, text messages, emails, even recordings of her phone calls. I was determined to build a case, not just for myself, but to stop her from doing this to anyone else. I felt like I was fighting a war I didn't even want to be in, but I had no choice. One night, I caught her sneaking into the bedroom with her phone. I knew I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. I looked over her shoulder and saw a message from Mike, talking about meeting up again that weekend. She was planning to see him behind my back again. That was the final straw. I felt my blood boil. How much more could I take? How much more betrayal was I supposed to endure? I decided I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer, explained everything. I wanted to freeze our assets, get an injunction to stop her from selling the house or withdrawing any more money. I told the lawyer about the forged signature and the gambling debts I needed to protect what was left of my assets. The lawyer warned me it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. I couldn't let her walk away with everything she'd stolen. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be the innocent wife. She'd cry, say she was sorry, claim she'd made mistakes and wanted to fix things. But I saw through her. I knew her tears were fake, her apologies hollow. She was just trying to buy time, to save her skin. I didn't trust her anymore, not even a little. Every time she looked at me with those fake tears, I felt a surge of disgust. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I trusted her with everything, and now I was left with nothing but a trail of lies and broken promises. The worst part was knowing she'd been lying to me for so long, hiding her affairs, forging my signature, gambling our money away. I wondered how I'd ever recover from this. How do you rebuild your life after something this devastating? How do you even begin to forgive someone who's done so much damage? But amidst all this chaos, I realized I couldn't stay passive. I had to fight back, stand up for myself, and protect what little remained of my dignity. I was tired of being the victim. I was tired of feeling helpless. So I started documenting everything, talking to the lawyer, and preparing for what I knew would be a long battle. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I had to take control, even if it meant burning everything down first. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Sarah had been orchestrating her escape for months. Every new piece of evidence I found only added to the pile of betrayal. I discovered she had opened multiple secret bank accounts under false names, funneling money away from our joint accounts. She'd been moving funds around, trying to hide her tracks. The gambling debts alone were staggering. She'd lost hundreds of thousands in online poker, slots, and betting on sports. All of it with my name on the accounts, even though I never authorized any of it. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept replaying everything: her late nights, her sudden interest in expensive clothes, the way she'd flirt with Mike in front of me sometimes like she didn't care if I saw. It was all part of her plan. The house sale, the gambling, the lies, it all came back to one thing. She was trying to wipe the slate clean and start over somewhere else with Mike or whoever she was seeing. I was just collateral damage in her scheme. The emotional impact was brutal. I'd go from furious to numb, then back again. I'd sit on the edge of the bed, stare at the ceiling, and think about all the years we'd spent building our life. How she'd smiled in my face, played the loving wife, while behind my back she was planning her betrayal. The worst part was feeling like I'd lost a part of myself. Trust had been shattered, and I didn't even recognize the woman I'd married anymore. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. One night I caught her in a lie. She told me she was at her sister's house, but I found a hotel receipt in her purse from 2 towns over. The hotel was expensive, and she'd been there. With Mike, when I confronted her, she snapped at me, saying I was crazy for snooping. She accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting her, but I knew better. I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it this time. I felt a surge of anger that I'd never experienced before. How could she look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly? That was the moment I decided I had to take legal action. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd change. I needed to protect myself and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family law and financial crimes. We discussed getting a court order to freeze her assets, to prevent her from selling the house or withdrawing any more money. I also wanted to get an official investigation into the forged signatures, the gambling debts, and the hidden accounts. I didn't trust her to do the right thing anymore. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be remorseful. She'd cry, say she was sorry, claim she'd made mistakes and wanted to make amends. But I saw through her. Her tears were fake, her apologies hollow. I knew she was just trying to buy time to manipulate her way out of this mess. Every time she looked at me with those fake tears, I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. How could someone I loved turn into this manipulative stranger? The financial chaos was overwhelming. I spent days gathering documents, taking photos of receipts, copying bank statements. I wanted to have everything documented, proof of her lies, her theft, her betrayal. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. She'd fight me every step of the way, but I was determined to fight for what was left of my dignity and to stop her from taking everything I worked for. The emotional toll was almost unbearable. I'd go from feeling like I was on the verge of a breakdown to moments of cold resolve. I'd sit in the kitchen, staring at the pile of papers and feeling this deep sense of loss. I'd lost my wife, my marriage, my sense of security. I wondered how I'd ever be able to trust again or even look at myself in the mirror. I was angry at her, but also at myself. For trusting her so blindly, I kept asking myself, how did I let it get this far? How did I not see the signs? The truth was, I'd been so caught up in our life and the image of us that I never expected her to betray me like this. Now I was left with a choice: fight or walk away. I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to do whatever it took to stop her from taking everything and to hold her accountable for what she'd done. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew one thing: I was done being a victim. It was time to stand up, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. I had to reclaim my life, piece by piece, and figure out how to move forward from this nightmare she'd created. The legal process moved faster than I expected, though it still felt like an eternity. The moment I got a court order to freeze her assets, her whole attitude changed. She went from pretending to be remorseful to outright furious. She accused me of ruining her life, called me a controlling bastard, and started throwing around accusations that I was somehow responsible for her bad choices. But I had the evidence: screenshots, bank statements, court documents, and I wasn't about to back down. She started lashing out, yelling at me, calling me a monster. She said I was trying to ruin her, that I was just jealous of her new life with Mike. The truth was, I didn't care about Mike anymore. I cared about what she'd done: selling our home, gambling away our future, forging my signature, lying to my face for months. That's what cut the deepest. I felt betrayed on every level, and I was done playing nice. I decided to confront her directly, face to face. I told her I was filing for divorce. I wanted her out of the house, and I wanted her to be held accountable for her actions. She screamed at me, called me a bastard, told me I was breaking up our family over some stupid money. But I didn't care anymore. She'd already broken what little trust we had left. I was determined to make her pay for her lies and her betrayal. Meanwhile, I kept documenting everything. Every conversation, every exchange, every lie she told. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her just in case she tried to hide anything else. I wanted to have as much evidence as possible when it went to court, because I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about making her face the consequences of what she'd done. The emotional toll was staggering. I felt like I was on a one-day furious, the next devastated. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything, questioning how I'd ever trusted her. I'd look at the photos of her with Mike, the receipts, the forged signatures, and wonder how I'd been so blind. It's a strange feeling, anger mixed with heartbreak. I hated her for what she'd done, but I also missed the woman I thought I knew. Now I was left with just memories, lies, and a pile of broken promises. I also started thinking about the future. Could I rebuild my life after this? Was there any way to forgive her, even just a little? Deep down, I knew that forgiveness wasn't an option right now. Not until she faced the consequences and I could feel that justice had been served. I realized I had to focus on myself, on healing, on protecting what was left of my sanity. I had to find a way to move forward even if it felt impossible. My friends and family were a huge help during this whole mess. Some of them told me I should cut her out completely, that she'd never change. Others urged patience, saying that sometimes people screw up and can be redeemed, but I knew better. The signs were too clear. She lied, cheated, stole, and manipulated for her own gain. I couldn't see a way back from that. I started planning my next steps, getting a new place, figuring out how to rebuild my credit, and making sure I had legal protection. This whole experience has taught me a lot about trust and betrayal. I thought I knew my wife, but I was wrong. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. And I learned that no matter how much you want to believe in someone, sometimes the truth is brutal and unforgiving. I'm still hurting, still trying to process everything, but I'm also determined to come out of this stronger. Because if I don't take control now, I'll never get my life back. And I owe it to myself to fight for that. In the end, everything I thought I knew about my marriage turned out to be a lie. The house is gone, the money is lost, and Sarah is out of my life, at least for now. The court proceedings dragged on for months, but I finally got a judgment that froze her remaining assets and required her to pay back what she stole. Seeing her face in court, knowing she'd betrayed everything we built, was a small victory, one that I clung to because I knew I had fought hard for it. Living through this nightmare has changed me. I've become more cautious, more guarded. I don't trust easily anymore, and I question everyone's motives. But I've also learned something invaluable: how to stand up for myself, how to fight back when someone tries to wipe you out. I realized I was stronger than I thought, and that sometimes the only way to reclaim your dignity is to face the pain head-on. Looking back, I see now that I was blind for a long time. I ignored the signs, made excuses for her behavior, and trusted her blindly because I wanted our life to work. But trust isn't just about believing someone won't hurt you. It's about protecting yourself from betrayal. That lesson's cost me dearly, but it's one I'll never forget. I still carry the wounds of her deception, but I also carry a sense of relief. I know I did everything I could to hold her accountable. I may be alone now, but I'm finally free from the chaos she brought into my life. I've started over, slowly rebuilding piece by piece. It's not easy, and some days are harder than others, but I'm determined to move forward. If there's anything I want to tell anyone reading this, it's this: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. Be cautious with who you let into your life and don't ignore the warning signs. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because once the mask comes off, it's almost impossible to go back. And sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to walk away and start over. It's painful, but it's necessary. I've learned that justice isn't always about revenge, but about reclaiming your life and dignity. I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a way out, if you're willing to fight for it. And I've learned that ultimately the only person responsible for your happiness is you. I may have lost a lot, but I've gained something even more important: clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of self. That's the story of how I faced betrayal, fought back, and somehow managed to find a way to keep going. It's not a perfect ending, but it's my ending. And I'm finally ready to start a new chapter, one where I trust myself more than anyone else, and where I never let anyone else betray me like that again.